Welcome to the fifth episode on
Welcome back.
Ecological podcast.
Gone a long way. So, what's our topic?
So the topic that we will be discussing today will be what are the individual measures that we can take in order to help
Individual
fight
efforts
climate
to
change.
further cause.
Climate change, a lot of people believe that its fundamentals are within systematic change, which is partly true. But then the problem of that is that a lot of people feel like they themselves cannot make a change, which isn't actually true because the only way that uh, can actually get off climate change is through individual efforts. So we can't really just wait for other people to do what we ourselves should be doing. And simple examples could be changes to our
Right.
daily lifestyle, significantly lower our emissions. And of course, it's also important to stay informed, inform others, and but you as a citizen also have as a method that you can enforce or pressure governments make proper changes.
Yeah, that's like a very fundamental part in doing all this. And so, other than, well, maybe changing your lifestyle, or I guess, okay, we can start with the lifestyle changes. We've kind of talked about this in our previous episodes, a little. But like you can also try to use public transport to reduce the, I guess, gas efficiency per person, and also it also reduces the congestion in the streets. That's a plus. So there's also benefits that you can bring to your own community while doing this, and you also don't have to be a very um, perfect in your way of being, as in you don't have to be 100% self-efficient. Like I know certain people aims to be self-sustaining, that they use their self-waste to grow their crops and eat it, and a perpetual cycle, which is pretty interesting and admirable. But that's really not a great standard to hold up, and often,
It doesn't need to be that extreme.
like a big repulsion people have to like becoming vegan, for instance. Like you don't have to be completely vegan. Just reduce your consumption a little. And like with enough people, the effect is much greater than a few that goes full on.
Exactly. If everyone contributes in a way, even if it's a small change, it can still have a significant result. I mean, the reason that we really need to get on with this is because we have to do more. Because right now, predictions are that we can't meet or we won't meet our target of 1.5 degrees of warming, and thus we sort of need to ask, what can we do to help this? And we'll be trying to answer sort of what is the biggest impact that you can have, and the main goals would be limiting the use of fossil fuels, such as transport, as you were saying, the way you eat, and the products you buy. So, sort of those are a few points, as well as um, what I wanted to talk about would be points such as driving and flying less, and switching to a green provider. The reason I say driveless is because recently, I think in 2017, there was a study which showed that I think it was 148 individual actions you can make against climate change. And I think they compared it with the impact, and going car-free as the number one most effective action individual could take.
Yeah, I'm not sure about like flying. I mean, yeah, I guess you can sacrifice yourself to take less vacations. But yeah, but there's other methods and like helping out without like necessarily sacrificing your love for meat or just your vacation. But it could also come in like forms of self-investment. Um, so like into something to upgrade or I guess to change like a gas burner into an electric stove. Fun fact, at some point in the Dutch government, all gas uses are going to be, I guess, declined. So like it'll be a gas-free country at some point. I'm not sure when, but I've heard that's the case. Um, but other than that, like you can even invest in like solar panels
Of course.
to go full on electric, and that might, yeah, help you financially as well in the long run.
And this topic about renewable energy, such as solar panels, a lot of people are sort of misinformed about this because a lot of people expect them to be extremely expensive, which is why a lot of people avoid them. In reality, becoming much cheaper over time. And there's an estimation that in 2020, they will be on par or cheaper than fossil fuels. And it's 2020 now, so I think it's a good time to switch
Mm-hmm.
to renewable energy. Not only is it much better for the environment, it's also more cost effective.
Most of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, better check the reviews to not get something that's necessarily draining. Unnecessarily draining, yeah. That could happen sometimes. But careful enough, yeah, you should be fine. And so, any ideas on like increasing people's contribution or engagement to this cause, Jan?
I mean, I think the most important thing is to keep people's hopes high because what we really don't want to happen is that people sort of give up and they stop trying.
A nice way.
I think that's one of the most significant ones. And I also wanted to touch upon what you were saying earlier about going vegan, which you were
Mm-hmm.
saying that you don't entirely have to go to the extreme of becoming vegan, just reducing your consumption is important. And I just found a study that shows that reducing the consumption of animal protein by half, which, if you think about that, it's not that great of an amount. It's not the hardest change that one can make. It can cut your diet's carbon footprint by more than 40%.
Wow, that's a huge part of your carbon footprint's contribution there. 40%.
And it's only for your diet, little change that you make.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, it's also great to like expand your I guess taste and food. Um Go into a little adventure in like vegan world. Start consuming new vegetables that you never did. Like I find that a big part of I guess France, from my experience alone. Not necessarily very open-minded to vegetables other than their carrots, potatoes, and I guess common vegetables. But yeah, strive for that social benefits of, I don't know, able to eat um, well in the restaurants, I guess, without embarrassing yourself.
And
But anyway, maybe a stretch there, but yeah.
I think I quickly touched upon rights. Um, you were arguing that people should still be able to go on vacations, which obviously yes, but I believe that flights were quite at an extreme level earlier. And now, with the corona pandemic, there's been a lot less flights.
Oh, that's not a very hard commitment to make at this time of recording, at
So
least.
hopefully, now borders are being sort of opened up, and there is still the amount of planes we see are still lower than before. So hopefully it can stay this way, and that's because, for example, a transatlantic flight release almost as much as a average yearly emission one person, 1.6 tons of carbon dioxide. And then you also have some changes such as shopping differently, as well as the amount of, yeah, of course, the food you eat as well, and cutting down with transport. And if you, I also wanted to say that actually we have a guest coming on to today's show. Yeah, we have somebody from my school. His
Oh, really?
name is Ron, and he will be giving us his opinion and his points, because also his brother is an activist, runs a lot of protests, and knows a lot about it. So hopefully we will get some insightful information.
I'm Ron. I've been going to the school for 9 years now. I'm 17, so yeah, I still live with my parents. So I find like changing my actions. We talked a lot about. I heard you talk a lot about changing your diet. I personally find that challenging, as the food that I eat isn't. I'm not the one that's deciding personally on like what to buy, etc. But my brother's here, and he can also introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Tomo. I'm Ron's older brother. Yeah, I was at the school, and yeah, and I can say that, of course, I agree with my brother that living alone is definitely easier to decide what you're eating, what's on your plate, and everything. I want to go back also what you guys said, that it's difficult to, like, you feel really helpless because it's more like an industrial and it's a system. It's like a really big system that, as like, you feel like you're not really capable of changing the whole system. And I can definitely agree on that. I feel the same thing. And I think I want to just add a little bit onto that as well. That it's very, of course, you need the time for it, but it's also helpful to go to protests. And yeah, the most crucial thing one can do is use the power to vote in local elections for like mayors, and also like, national and also European Union elections. They definitely can affect everything. Like the EU is actually the third largest how do you say, like, global greenhouse gas emissions after China and the US. So it's like we're not the best either. So we definitely have to improve on that. And of course, like I said, voting, protesting, putting your voice out there, and also educating others about this is one of the most crucial things. What can I do personally? Well, there's multiple ways. The easiest way to do it is to not buy a lot of stuff. Like, this whole consumerism is very not sustainable. I think I'm always, if I want to buy something, I'm always looking on Marktplatz or like the Facebook Marketplace for secondhand.
It's also cheaper.
It's also cheaper, and I'm also, you find a lot of good free stuff there as well. As a student, for me, it's very helpful. And also, what was I saying? Yeah, upcycling. Like, I'm building my own things, and I'm using things to make, instead of throwing them away, I find a new use for them, and it also makes me feel good knowing that I didn't have to buy something new from Amazon or something like that. So that's also, for me, it feels good. If you look at the, yeah, sorry, continue.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I agree with you on that point you made about using your rights, because obviously that's one of the largest ways that you can change the way a government or company change the way they affect their policies.
Yeah, interesting enough, we kind of talked about this last episode, I think. The importance of getting your voice heard to gain the support of the government. The only way to, I guess, implement rules or I guess what policies in supporting whether the change of like I don't know subsidies to like help change your house to better insulate and stuff. Like essentially, it's your votes that's going to incentivize some politicians to actually put those in. And once they know that, that's like a big part in getting votes. Like that's when they will start to care. Mostly, globally, that stays true. And going back to like we 17-year-olds and lower, I don't know what your age is, but probably not financially independent from our parents, any of us yet here. Yeah, we don't have a whole lot of say in what's on our table. But you know, if you're like us, you can try to persuade your parents to less buy meat. That could also be a way.
Yes, and just one step back, you said also to let the government know, and that's you do that by signing a lot of petitions online. That's really easy to do. It takes 1 minute per petition or something, and attending the protests. Now with the coronavirus, it's a bit difficult, but in general, attending protests, being there, and being part of a you know, you are the protest if you're there. Like you, when they say how many people were there, like you are one of them, and the more people go, the larger the numbers, the more people know about it, and also the more it's on the news, the more people will discuss this, and then change comes from that. Like people a few years ago, before Greta did the protest, like no one really talked about it actually.
Yeah, that's quite cold.
And also the if you look at the graph, like the pie chart of where the greenhouse emissions come from, you get 25% from electricity and heat production. So of course, if you actually look at the pie chart, you see like, okay, here I can change my behavior, here I can change my behavior, etc., etc. So we can go one by one if you like.
Well, I'd even argue that's even simpler. You don't have to see any graph, really. The easiest and most assuring way to help would be to buy locally. As you said, like secondhand stuff, those are great if you can get them local. And like and like the whole protest thing. It's great to be in the streets and adding on to the number out in the streets. But I'd argue that it's even more important to actually go and vote on anything that supports your view or like your demands of the protest, because you'd be surprised how many people who actually don't vote, and that's a huge problem in the US, for instance.
Also in the EU, they like less than half of the people have like voted. It's increased this time, but still like not enough people are voting. And,
Yeah, like
but also yeah. So, for the electricity and heat production part, it's really easy to reduce on that. Like I think you said it as well, to get solar panels and things like that, and also sorry, yeah, to like not really heat up the house during the winter, instead like using your already like jumpers and clothes inside the house instead of warming the whole house. That's like very simple things like these could actually have a change. And then the next sector, also 25%, is agriculture, forestry, and other land use, etc. And of course, not only is that eating less beef and having like less dairy products, it's also the deals that the EU makes with Brazil, for example. Like just like 1 or 2 years ago, the EU made a deal with Brazil that they bring in meat much easier. They don't put like tariffs. They don't like really tax it or something like that. And that's a really big contributor. And the EU already has like a role in it. So And for example, also another example where countries have a role that people don't really realize is Norway. Norway is really seen that they're really green, but actually their contribution is really high because they're selling a lot of oil to other countries.
Yeah, I agree. That's one of our main incomes, and because of that, they also don't need to imply any forestry to the amount of oil they have. So thank you for being here. It was very insightful, but sadly, we have to wrap up soon. And hopefully, the audience has learned something new, and hopefully, we inspired them to make some changes in their life, or inspired them to go to a protest and make a change. And
Go protest, go vote, buy locally, secondhand, upgrade your stuff electric.
And don't fly. Don't
And
fly.
don't fly. Don't fly as well. Or at least try not to. Anyway, that concludes this episode then, episode 5. And
Thank you for having us.
no worries. Thank you for being here, and thank you for listening. This is an Ecological podcast. Signing out.